I'm not just saying this, Joe. I'm a huge advocate in outsourcing PR to the professionals. Um, and we have seen after, 2 years of having a dedicated program, which consisted of, again, pairing that sort of larger brand awareness message with getting our technical experts in front of reporters, we've seen incredible return and just in terms of um, who knows about us, what our capabilities are in the marketplace. And I think it is far and away, if you're not spending anything on brand awareness, it is the number one place to start.
Well, welcome back to another edition of Marketing Matchup. My name is Joe Anthony. I'm your host of the podcast. My role is I'm the president at Gregory, and part of my job is I get to talk to brilliant marketing minds every day when in execution of our client campaigns. We'd like to take a moment out of that routine to talk to some of the sharpest marketing leaders in the industry. I'm super delighted to have these impromptu, candid conversations. Rob and Tara, welcome to the program. I know you've never met before, but we're going to become friends today. Welcome to a Marketing Matchup. Rob, you are the man in charge of marketing for Compound Planning. And Tara, Ryan, you're a partner and CMO at Cerity Partners. People say, well, why'd you pick these two guests to come together when one has 130 billion call it at Cerity and Compound's got 4 billion? Well, there's two things I saw when I was looking at what's going on. First of all, for firms of your size, you're both punching above your weight despite where you're at in the marketplace from the size perspective. And both of you happen to have just about 2 years on the job in your role, which I think is really an interesting dynamic from the standpoint of, I think marketing is only accelerated in prominence and importance over the last couple of years. People like you are in seats that didn't exist maybe 7 to 10 years ago, your company, if not shorter than that. So we're excited to have you join the show. So Tara.
Thanks for having us, Joe.
Yeah,
Thanks, Joe.
Tara, I'll let you go first. I like to ask all my guests two simple questions. Just give us a quick rundown of who you are in the business, where you came from, and then answer the question for me. Did you always want to be a marketer when you grew up?
Yeah, that's a heavy question, Joe. Yeah, thank you, and great to meet you, Rob. Excited for the conversation. I'm not new to financial services, but I am new to the RIA space, as you mentioned. I spent most of my career across the spectrum of communications and marketing. Most of my career at Goldman Sachs, 17 years there, and I did a small stint in the nonprofit startup space, working for a startup called Ownership Works, where we were helping portfolio companies within private equity share ownership um, with all employees. And I had a couple colleagues who had joined Cerity Partners and ultimately recruited me to join a little over 2 years ago. And yeah, it's been a wild ride for the last 2 years, learned a lot about the RIA industry. So it's been really exciting, and I'm sure we can dig into that. Um, in terms of, what I started out doing, I was a literature major. And so I've always come at marketing with a communications lens. So, there was some kind of veering left and right, Joe, but ultimately I feel that I use my English degree every day because so much of what we do is messaging and word choice and how we connect with people through language. So I actually feel like I landed pretty close to where I started, although with some zigs and zags along the way.
We're going to come back to that point about your English and literature background a little later in the conversation. It was relevant to a couple of things I want to talk about. But Rob, give us your origin story. All marketing superheroes have one. What's yours?
Yeah. So, kind of started my passion expertise kind of meets at the intersection of marketing, wealth management, and technology. I've spent my entire career, over 15 years, either working directly at financial services companies or helping selling and marketing to them. Honestly, I thought I was going to retire a financial advisor. So I am a CFP. I was at one of the fastest growing RIAs and was on the partner track there. And kind of how I got my second stint, I guess, into marketing was it was after after tax season. I was sitting on the beach in the Bahamas with my wife, and a recruiter from a company called Seismic reached out to me and said, "Hey, we've had a ton of success in asset management. We just raised our Series D, got $1 billion valuation. We're a unicorn, yay. And we're trying to carry some of that momentum into other key verticals in financial services across banking, wealth management, insurance, and others. And we're hiring people directly from those industries to help us with that. And, I have my CFP, so I was like, I could always go back to being an advisor if I fail at this, if I don't like it, or whatever it might be. Didn't have any kids at the time, so the risk was a little bit less than it might be if I was trying to make that change today with two young ones at home. But ultimately joined Seismic. I was there for about 2 years, helped them grow from 500 to 1,500 employees, about 100 million in revenue to 250 million in revenue. And, it was an incredible ride. I didn't hate it. I wasn't bad at it. I kind of loved it. But what I learned is I wanted to get closer to the day in the life of the advisor-client relationship. And ultimately, that's what led me to join Compound, where today I'm the head of marketing at Compound Planning, which is a $4 billion tech-enabled RIA, like you mentioned.
Well, one of the things I find fascinating, and again, when I was thinking about how to match up guests, finding the symmetry of two people that were installed in their positions around the same time, knowing that sort of like, all right, when you boot up a marketing program or reboot it, or however, or maybe you're joining a fast moving train, you're just trying to jump, like, however you describe it, I think there's an opportunity to take a look around and sort of what's current, what's fresh, what's relevant today, and make that imprint when you build the programs out. And so it's something that maybe we kick off our conversation around that a little bit in terms of give us an orientation of how you see marketing in the RIA landscape today and where you think firms should be leaning into, knowing that you sort of got to help call the shots in terms of where your firms are leaning into most recently. And Tara, I'll pick on you. I mean, everyone sees Cerity out there. The firm is probably most known for it seems like acquisition after acquisition. I know that's not the whole story, of course. But obviously Cerity's put its name on the map. How did you come in and sort of, wrangle that and help prioritize and put your imprint on? Like, give us a glimpse in terms of what you prioritized.
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, I mean, and yes, we grow both organically and inorganically through welcoming incredible colleagues to our firm. So yes, we grow in both of those areas. And I will say the merger environment was brand new to me. So when I joined, it took me a good 6 months to really get into the rhythm of what it means to welcome new partners to the firm and new colleagues to the firm, and then get everyone aligned under one message, one brand, because we're one Cerity Partners. And so that was a huge adjustment for me coming into the role, was really understanding the rhythms of the merger environment and what had to be true for us to do that really, really well. Um, and then as you would expect, Joe, the first year was taking stock of what do we need, what do we have, what adjustments do we need to make um, in service of building a marketing team that was going to scale through the next couple iterations of growth for the firm. And the firm was already growing really aggressively, as you know. And so a lot of my focus was on the team and building a world-class marketing team. And so we've made incredible strides on that front in the last 2 years, but really taking stock of what do we need today, but most importantly, what are we going to need in the next, right, 3 to 5 years, and then building from there. But the merger environment really, it took me a good 6 months to kind of adjust to that because that was new for me.
Yeah, it's kind of like the equipment manager on a sports team at the trading deadline. When new players come aboard, they have to make sure that the right uniform, the names are stitched on there, and can get them to be all playing on the same way
Yeah.
pretty quickly. And it's a lot for marketers to do to sort of assimilate new faces and new entities alongside
Sure.
of the that's I can only imagine sort of the deep breaths you have to take to jump in like that. So, Rob, from your perspective, getting started at Compound, I know Compound is a different inflection point in the growth when you arrived. Tell us a little bit how you sunk your teeth in and what you helped prioritize, the organization prioritize in the marketing mix.
Yeah. Tara, a lot of what you said resonated with me, and we're working on a lot of that as well. So when I actually joined Compound, the company was under a different name. So it was Alternative Wealth at that point in time. We had 2 advisors and about 400 million in AUM, and really basically just had a website, and that was it from a marketing standpoint. So I really started with a lot of the content, you know, started, I don't recommend this in most companies, but a company our stage started with the website and kind of what the messaging was going to be for that, and then being able to build that out, and then take that and kind of trickle that through to all of our other different pieces of content, which would be like our different pitch decks, different one pagers that we would have. And that probably took about 2 or 3 months, just kind of like get to that standpoint, to kind of be able to stand everything up. So we had something to direct everyone to. People were finding us on the web or through conversations with our advisors or on social media. And then it took a kind of massive turn. About 6 months into my time at Alternative, we acquired Compound Financial and then merged the two firms together and rebranded them under the Alternative Wealth umbrella, but rebranded it as Compound Planning. And overnight, we went from, at that point, Alternative was about 650 million AUM. Compound was about 450. So we became a $1 billion firm. And one of the great things that came out of that is that Compound had built out a really incredible brand, had a really great client-facing dashboard where people can go to sign up for our dashboard, begin linking their accounts and tracking their net worth, and do a bunch of other things when working with their advisors. So kind of when I think about the strategy, I think a lot about like our capabilities, and not every firm has a product-led growth strategy like we do, or a freemium approach. And ultimately what we're trying to do is drive people to that website, sign up for a dashboard, raise their hand if they want to talk to an advisor or not, go in, start linking their assets. And then we're able to see, hey, these are the people that we should be like following up with and talking to. And maybe these are the people that we should try to nurture a little bit more along the way. So that was like kind of starting in the middle there, because like I said, not a lot of firms, or the firms I had been at before, had that product-led growth strategy. And then we just started kind of adding on the different channels that were the ways to like drive the traffic there. And what's been impressive for us is all of our growth to date, except for that one acquisition, has come through organic marketing. And I'm using organic marketing because in the wealth management space, inorganic includes, of course, M&A, but also recruiting advisors, which is a bit of a hybrid approach. But when I say organic marketing, is we're not paying for that. We weren't running ads. It was all through content that we were creating or outreach that we were doing. So for us, it was kind of enabling our teams to be able to have that kind of one story, many voices type approach, one compound, if you will, on that side of it. And then from there, finding out what works, doing more of what works, kind of turning those programs like our blog, which we call the manual, which has like 150 plus different personal finance topics. And we found one ICP that really resonates with our messaging, which is people in technology, people with equity compensation, a lot of founders, early employees, executives at those companies, and then doubling down on that, and then trying to find all the different channels that we can find those people. So generally, that's been our approach here. And over the past 2.5 years, it's been pretty incredible, growing from 400 million and 2 advisors to 50 plus advisors and 4 billion under management.
So Rob, I love the orientation around building a marketing program purpose built for that audience, so that niche, right? And as long as I've been in the business, and that's almost 25 years, at least a handful of times a year, you always either see something at a conference or something in the trade pubs about niche marketing or acquisitions done because, we bought this firm because they had a great, inroad with Silicon Valley tech executives or, influencers, or pick a category, right? And so it's always been not necessarily the silver bullet for growth, but an area that firms have leaned into. And I think it's really interesting that you've helped build a program specifically around a niche within the first couple of years that you got on board there. Tara, how does that play in with a larger organization like yours? When I think of 133 billion, whatever the number is today, there's probably 15 niches you could probably highlight as being important to Cerity across the nexus. How do you tackle that, like sort of the basics of know your audience and deploying a marketing strategy to meet that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a phased approach for sure. And we've had the benefit of merging with practices that do have specialties. We've merged with practices that focus on women, by women, for women. We have incredible cross-border specialists. We have tax specialists. So, I would say from a marketing perspective, we want to make sure that our macro messaging and our brand messaging is really, really tight, and that people understand who we are, right? What we do, how we can help. But then that double click down is so important, especially Rob, you mentioned, content being so important. We've really doubled down on content over the last year. We've 3x our content production. And a lot of it is in service of those niche audiences. So I do think it has to be a parallel path, right? You have to go broad from a brand awareness perspective and keep it really, really educational. But then you have to talk to very specific audiences if you do want to get their attention. And we know just from our data, but I'm sure marketers the world over understand that the more specific you get, the more powerful that content can be. And then you add really sophisticated distribution strategies, and it's a win-win. So I would say we are parallel pathing, Joe, where we want to keep the core messaging really tight and broad, but we do spend a good portion of our time digging into specific demographics, and we're only going to continue to sharpen the pencil on that as we move forward.
Now, so let's piggyback off that a little further for the two of you. So we're thinking about firms growing and obviously being successful when you really connect with those audiences. And it makes me think of one of the fastest growing trends impacting marketing, and frankly, business, in terms of how firms are using AI tools to augment or accelerate or scale their marketing efforts. And Tara, I'm thinking of you as someone who has a literature and English background. A lot of folks that I know, including my business partner, who's a writer by training, actually looked at the rise of AI tools as equipment as opposed to an obstacle or an adversary, because he felt strongly that people who have a strong command of the audience and the language will actually win. So my question is, how do you see that playing in terms of using content tools and AI and things like this to scale the volume without losing the message? Like, how do you make that work in this age where I think if you go to any conference or page through any trade pub, you're going to see AI this, AI that, including in the area of marketing. Terry, want to
Yeah.
take a swing?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I mean, look, coming up as a English major, and I'll call myself a words enthusiast. There are elements, I will not lie, in terms of AI that make me, wary of how we deploy it. That said, we are absolutely looking at AI from all angles of marketing, and certainly implementing it in some places, and looking at it very seriously in others. Um, Look, I love to say that the reason why I love marketing is that it's a combination of art and science. And I think there are ways to deploy AI to the science pieces of it that can be incredibly powerful, right? Taking a piece of content, iterating on it, slicing it up, using AI for reporting, using AI for creative asset production. But given the human business that we are in, I wanna be very watchful of any degradation of quality. And so I think when it comes to connecting with humans, I don't think that there's a replacement for that using AI, certainly. But I think there are ways for us to use it in a really smart way. But I would never, ever, ever want to say that we allow it to degrade, right, the quality of the content. There are ways we can use content in terms of volume for paid media in particular. But I do think people can still see through kind of what's been churned through, and what is a really high quality piece of content. And I think it's really important as marketers that we respect that there's a distinction there, and each side of that has different use cases.
True. And so, Rob, how do you take that in your organization as you're building your team and trying to meet those content demands?
Yeah, so I totally agree. Like when I see one of my roles here is almost being the kind of editor in chief of all the content that gets created by a lot of our different partners. We're a much smaller team here, so pretty much every piece of content goes through me, and I want to make sure what we're sending out is not AI slop. I see, you know, AI in terms of content creation helping to kind of solve for like the page syndrome. So, if you have an idea, you can start with something and it can get you like 60 to 70% of the way there. But then you really have to give it the specificity that it needs to be valuable. And also make sure it's, not including those AI cues that are very obvious. Either it's parallel sentence structure or overuse of M dashes or whatever it might be. When you read it, you kind of just know this was written by AI. So that's one side, which is kind of like the Gen AI use of it. We're also paying very close attention. Might not be like using AI, but paying attention to AI, which is how LLMs are citing us as a company. So what we've seen over the past year specifically is a massive increase in the amount of traffic that we're getting from the different LLMs. So people call it AEO, others call it SEO in terms of search everywhere optimization. I'm not sure, but we just got to land on a term for it. So, we've made changes to like the way we are creating our blog content. LLMs really like it if you can put a TLDR summary at the top of the article and an FAQ at the bottom of the article. And they kind of just eat that stuff up and they're able to cite that. And they also love just getting really, really specific. So rather than talking about stock options in general, let's do a really deep dive into RSUs, another one into ISOs, another one into NSOs, and so on. That's another part of it. And then we're also using it to enrich our contacts and our database. So making sure that we kind of understand our different personas and niches that we have. Even within the tech ICP niche, there's many different ones. There could be someone who, just started a company and they're a founder of that company. They could be someone who's getting acquired or someone who's approaching an IPO. So making sure we kind of understand those different types of sub niches within our primary niche is really helpful for us. So we can kind of target them in the most effective way. And then it's also like a research assistant for me in a lot of different ways. We're starting to use more agents too, to kind of automate some of that research that we've been doing kind of manually, like typing into ChatGPT and do that. So for example, a lead comes in and this is a qualified lead. Go do a little bit of research, find out their LinkedIn profile, find out some of the stuff they've been doing, and being able to hand that off to an advisor so they can enter that first phone call with the client with much more information about that prospect. Sorry. And when you pair that with the fact that that person has signed up for a dashboard, might have linked up some of their assets, you can see, hey, this person has, they've linked up their Carta account and they have equity at 3 different companies. You learn a lot more about that person, and the advisor can come into that first phone call and, immediately deliver value and essentially accelerate through those discovery calls. And then kind of the last piece of it, which relates to how advisors use our dashboard. So we have a part of our platform, which we call Advisor HQ, and that's essentially AI-powered operating system for financial advisors here at Compound. And a piece of that's Activity Monitor. And what Activity Monitor is essentially is plugging into all the different emails, phone calls, Zoom calls, transcripts. So if you're using like an AI call recorder, and bring in all that information, that kind of unstructured context, and using that and bringing it back in kind of a structured way. And some of those examples could be like, hey, I'm planning on buying a home in 6 months and I'm going to need to be taking out a loan. Essentially, Activity Monitor can create those action items and reminders for you, because it's great that the AI note takers create those notes for you and plug them into your CRM, wherever it might be. But then when you actually have to go and take action on those things some point in the future, you still have to kind of comb through those different notes or remember those things or create your task list. And that's another way that we're using AI to kind of just make our advisors' life easier so they can be more proactive rather than reactive when those things are happening.
So Rob, you said so much there that I want to react to. There's a lot of things that we're jumping off on it, and I appreciate that answer. And one of the things I want to say very clearly, anyone who's followed my podcast or heard me speak at industry events, I try to be the biggest advocate for empowered marketing executives. Every RIA firm that says they have an organic growth mandate should have someone do this. What you just went through, there's no way an advisor or an operations associate wearing a second or third hat can do all that and be on top of it. Just that was like a perfect case in point of why you can't be a CFP practicing advisor and master that craft. You might be able to do it over time, but not concurrently with it's just a lot, right? And so, but I want to talk a little bit more about what you mentioned with AI search towards the front end of your answer, because it really ties into something also Tara triggered earlier with her literature background. I really believe that those people that know how people talk and write and listen are the ones that are going to really help their brands win at the AI search optimization game. Call it AEO, GEO, LLM, EO, whatever. It's optimizing how you get found and making sure you get found, right? And so, and it's really important to be able to have that capability. It's one of the reasons why when we realized that the puck had already moved past, I can make blog posts and interesting graphics with AI, to my customers are finding us differently because of AI. We built the Gregory Influence Engine, and we're supposed to launch it in 2026. It was happening so fast, we launched it earlier this fall, precisely because people in your shoes are trying to get a handle on how am I showing up in 7 or 8 different most relevant LLM platforms, and also understanding that. And time again, it goes back to the areas of strength that people like Tara have, whether writers by trade or word masters or word curious, whatever word you use, word strategist.
Yep.
Uh, and so, and I think it's really important for us as marketers to realize that anything we do is really a function of the audience we're serving, not necessarily the masters we serve, if that makes sense. And so when I look at this, and I want to dive on that question, when you think about getting found, and AI search is a big place. If you were going to prioritize where you think your firm should be found for your business objectives, I want to talk about that and also understand what your firms are doing explicitly to make sure you're showing up those places. And Tara, again, I know your organization probably, due to scale, probably have multiple answers to that, but I still want to get into that. And like, where are you working hardest to show up?
Yeah, I mean, I think the two ways to answer that question. One, we're actually working really hard on our reporting to make sure we understand where the traffic is coming from in a more sophisticated way to then inform where we make decisions to be. And so this past year has been a year of tremendous investment in the sophistication of how we are tracking visitors to our website, where they came from, right? Which is then creating a virtuous cycle for us to understand, yes, a huge portion, a growing portion of the people that are coming to us are coming from ChatGPT or other search engines like that. And so we are doubling down on, and Rob, you mentioned this, right? FAQs and all of the insights posts, and just making sure that we are covering all of those bases. At the same time, we invested in really optimizing our website for just general search because, right, we know in working with a lot of our external partners, the specific phrases and search terms that people are putting into a chat GPT. And so we're actually working to reverse engineer our content based on the search volume that we're seeing, which we found to be incredibly helpful. But I would say, really focused on the content production in such a way that we know it's going to be responsive to the chat GPTs of the world, and making sure that the actual language we're using is matching what we know people are asking for in the way that they are asking it.
Rob, I'd love to hear your response on that, but I want to comment quickly. Tara, is one of the things that we've seen really work well in making sure you're showing up the right way and building your content the right way. We reverse engineer for ourselves and for our clients' websites. We go in the pages that are landed on and stayed on the most, the kinds of questions or reasons why. And we've even used the different LLMs to brainstorm questions like, hey, why would someone want to look at an advisor's bio page? I mean, whatever, or, what drives people to look at, in the news or things like that, and examine questions that the potential prompts that they might be putting in. And it's really interesting because instead of thinking about AI driving them there, it's actually helping you think or uncover other areas of why they're showing up. And so I look at that as an advantage for marketers because really these are all tools to help accelerate the process. And again, how people think about finding advisors is probably different than the average advisor might think about it themselves. Some are more tuned in, but and so I think it's really important to stay open-minded on that. So back to you, Rob. So you think about how your firm is showing up and where you're prioritizing showing up in your marketing. I mean, we've talked about AI search here, but walk us through how else you're looking to make sure that you're found by those audiences that are important to you.
Yeah, well, first I'll start out and agree with Tara. We are really making sure our reporting is sound. So, like she said, we understand and can make those informed decisions because otherwise you're just kind of finger in the wind to figure out exactly what's working and what's not. So we've been spending a lot of time to make sure that we can answer those questions. And some of that is kind of looking at the different tools that are available to you. But like I'll start like what worked for us is like a good SEO strategy becomes a good AEO strategy. Now there are things you can do to make it better, like what I mentioned before, by putting those summaries and those FAQs and writing really specific deep dive topics on certain things. So that's really like what we've been doing. And some of that is making sure like we know what's going on in the market. We're listening out there, and some of these are some of the AI research agents that we're doing. Like when a company files their S1 and they're going to be going public, to kind of pull out the research, be able to find out some of the information, allow us to maybe go talk to some of our clients that might be, say Figma, who went public earlier this year. We had a number of clients at Figma, and we were able to kind of create content specifically for the Figma IPO. We did a webinar, we had different one-pagers, we trained our different advisors on that. And those are the types of things that are like making sure we're showing up on not just AEO, but also SEO. So like you'll often notice, like I go into our Google Search Console and I'll see like what keywords are showing up and what people are searching there. Some of these things are super long tail. They're, things that like someone would never type into a Google search bar. Well, guess what? That's not a person going in there most likely type that in. That is ChatGPT searching on Google or Bing or one of those things. So that's the idea. And then we're just tracking it. So like one thing I've also noticed is the traditional SEO playbook, it can take a lot of time for content to start showing up on search. So especially if you're getting started, say you have nothing to start with, it might take 6, 9, 12 months before you're actually starting to see traffic come through those things. And what we've noticed is, the LLMs of the world don't require that much time. So, when we wrote an article over the summer, I'll kind of like go back in time a little bit to the summer, but we wrote an article about different tender offers. And within 30 days, we were seeing people come in from the LLM specifically going to that tender offer article. That never would have happened before in the world of traditional SEO, because it would have taken so much time for that single article to build up that essentially that brand authority to show up on page one of a Google search. So that's really it. I mean, it's making sure that you have the reporting set up. You're using that reporting to inform the strategy of the content that you're going to create. You're checking to see what's working, and then you're doing more of that in different ways. And that's basically how we're trying to make sure we're showing up in those different areas.
I think the only other thing I would add, Joe, which is not about content, but more aligned to your original AI question, is when, right, every marketer is making decisions based on, do you want to build, buy, or rent certain capabilities? We do not consider a vendor anymore without deeply understanding what their AI strategy is. So it has also become part of how we evaluate the work that we outsource, even through third parties.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and for us in doing that, we've fully embraced technology. I think every business is technology enabled, however you want to, whether they're tech first or not. And in looking at that, I think it's so important you have a strategy and understanding and be able to communicate it internally and how you show up, because they're certainly getting buy-in from advisors, even use content, if they're wary that it's not really going to feel like it's something they would say, or if they feel like it's too me too in terms of what might be available out there in the ether. I think it's important. I think it's another reason why opinion-led content and frankly PR material seems to be more important, because there's a differentiation. Everyone says to see the sky and you better say it's blue unless you're colorblind. But there's other things you have an opinion on, like, the question of, should I pay off my mortgage in retirement? There's more answers than one. And that's where the point of view of the opinion shows up in content that might be relevant to your audience. And it's more and more, it's changed the mindset where you flash back 3, 5, 7 years ago, that a lot of the advisor firm produced content was very much almost reporting what happened last quarter, like fact-based. And now you're seeing a lot more storytelling, a lot more conjecture or what-if scenarios, or even imagining case studies of, that are relevant to client situations. And so I want to jump from there into something else that I think is AI search adjacent. Actually, two things. But the first thing is the arrival of testimonials or Google reviews. I think we've seen it in building our influence engine that those are very valuable in helping a firm stand up a stronger presence in the world of AI search. But it's also something that's relatively new, and some firms are tepid about it or scared. Or I'm curious, what do your firms do, Tara? Like, what's your current stance on Google reviews and testimonials? And Rob, I would love to hear what Compound is doing as well when Tara's done.
Yeah, it's a really timely question. We are preparing to move into the testimonial space, and I'm very, very lucky that we have incredible partners on our compliance team that are very business focused, and so we're working really closely with them to come up with the plan to start using them selectively. I think we will lean into probably video versions of testimonials because video is also a place that we're looking to really make investments in. And then, yes, we have been looking into the best way to think about Google reviews and how we want to deploy that really thoughtfully. And we have advisors that come to us and say, like, I have a client and they've asked, right, how can I shout, from the rooftops about how amazing you are? And so we want to be prepared with all the different ways that we can tell that client to do that. And Google reviews is definitely at the top of our list. So both of those things are something that we're actively looking to deploy in 2026.
Then, Rob, how is your firm getting your arms around that?
Yeah, I'd say we're at about a similar stage there. It's something that we're going to be looking at for 2026 as well. But yeah, you see, I know, although the question isn't related to the LLMs or how they're citing your company, but LLMs love that stuff. They're looking for essentially that third party kind of research that's out there, whether it's Google reviews or Reddit posts or case studies that exist or testimonials that exist on your website. So yeah, we also have great compliance partners internally. So we're gearing up to be able to do that and to be able to bring those stories into the content we're creating. We've done more like anonymous type case studies in the past, and we've seen a lot of success on those on like Twitter X and LinkedIn, kind of going through, hey, you're a Figma employee and you have this many shares in something, and here's the 2 paths you could have taken, and here's the difference in those outcomes. So we've seen success on the kind of the anonymous side of that. So we want to kind of double down on that and get some of those more kind of get the real faces, the real voices, get those videos, the quotes, and all that stuff built into our strategy. So we're not doing it right now, but it's definitely something that we have planned for 2026.
Testimonials, Google reviews, however you want to look at it. I have an opinion on that, and in terms of, I think firms should take the opportunity if you feel good about how you're serving clients. But also, I find, and I'm not sure if your firms are engaged with custodian referrals like what Fidelity and Schwab offer, or with Smart Asset, for example. By the way, real quick, are you the one do you guys have external referral programs like that?
We do.
Yes. And then
we do. We've worked with Smart Asset a little bit, but not with the custodian partners currently.
So, but on that point, I really feel strongly that if you have any kind of external referral partner, where the first line of defense for people hearing about you from, call it your Schwab rep or whatever it might be, would be they're going to check you out online, and they're looking for that kind of validation. And if you're going to be paying those basis points to that lead, or paying to participate with Smart Asset, whatever it's going to be, you owe it to your organization to have that stood up in a way to maximize that ability to be vetted and perhaps with the best alignment between those referred leads. I think they go hand in glove. Vice versa, I think if you're doing that work to stand up that, you better have other programs in place to maximize the value of those testimonials. And yeah, organically it'll help your AI search. We know that. And obviously it's easy for advisors to point to these things once they're baked and published and compliance approved. But I think there's real compulsion. It's a tool that firms haven't had a lot of. We're in an era where social proof means so much more, which leads me to my next question. Both of you firms, your firms are proactive in your PR strategy. You're working with agencies, not mine, for full disclosure, but nonetheless, you put some value on that presence. And we have found that, Rob, I was going to say this before, but I want to say it as a question. Firms that have a strong publicity presence tend to have an elevated domain authority when it comes to how they show up in their content with AI search. So if you're active out there and you're recognized, again, it could be a cadence of deal announcements. It could just be executives in the news. But when you're recognized, your content that you publish, like Rob, you said you did something on tender offers and it was within a month. It's a good bet that Compound Planning's web presence was already highly validated by ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever, right? And because it sort of ties into everything that's new as well as the old school, hey, we should have brand visibility. Walk us through a little bit about what your PR strategy and how it fits into the marketing game plan. Tara, love to hear from you first.
Sure. Yeah, I'm super passionate about this space. When I joined Cerity Partners 2+ years ago, other than adjusting to the merger environment, engaging with a PR partner was one of the first things that I did. I feel that, or I have seen in my experience, that PR is the absolute best bang for your buck from a brand awareness perspective. It gets your thought leaders out into the world, and it's a longer term game, right? Where our goal is to build really great relationships with reporters over time, and they report we know reporters move around, and it's a lot to keep track of for a small scrappy marketing team. So I'm not just saying this, Joe. I'm a huge advocate in outsourcing PR to the professionals. Um, and we have seen after, 2 years of having a dedicated program, which consisted of, again, pairing that sort of larger brand awareness message with getting our technical experts in front of reporters. We've seen incredible return in terms of, um, who knows about us, what our capabilities are in the marketplace, and I think it is far and away, if you're not spending anything on brand awareness, it is the number one place to start. And so I'm a huge believer in it. I think leave it to the experts, and you will get, right, meaningful impressions and a great trajectory coming off of an investment in a PR program.
Well, Tara, by the way, when we do uploads of the shortcuts to promote this, that PR thing that's going to be yours. That's the winning answer in my book. Well done.
I'm happy
Um,
to provide it.
yeah, and so Rob, how does that play into your firm strategy? Obviously, coming at it from a different perspective with a firm that's early in the game, its development.
Yeah, we definitely took a little bit of a different approach there, but I think ended up in the same place. PR has been, and just like earned media in general, has been one of the biggest drivers of traffic to our website. I essentially bootstrapped it for the first 12 to 18 months internally, kind of trying to build up all those relationships with the different journalists and media publications and industry publications myself to prove out that it worked and was successful and point to the data, going back to reporting and how important it is. Being like, hey, look, we launched this press release on this date. This is where it got picked up across the industry, and look at all the different traffic and leads it drove either through our client acquisition or advisor recruiting strategy. And once we kind of got that and we could show that, hey, this is working, it's worth an investment. Rob should no longer be doing this anymore. Let's roll Rob into kind of trying to get something else stood up, which is kind of like one of my specialties, kind of taking things and going 0 to 1 and doing that. And then we brought on our own PR partner to stand that up and run that for us. And we've seen it show up in so many different ways. A lot of our different press releases on like Business Wire are showing up on page 1 of Google if you search for compound. And then, in terms of going back again to the AEO side of things, we see this content showing up in so many different ways. It could be through like the actual Business Wire press release. It could be through like the landing page that's tied to that press release that's on our website, or an article that we wrote related to this press release. It's like they're not coming through any one of these individual pieces of content that we're creating, but it's kind of the whole strategy that is what's working for us. So yeah, it's definitely a big part of our strategy and something we're going to continue doing into 2026 and beyond.
So I'm a believer that as of today, there are no household names in the RIA space. Even if you have 133 billion, I'm not saying that they're not notable names. I'm saying the average person with $3 million walk down the street and say, "Hey, name me 5 independent RIAs." They're probably not gonna. If they name any, they're probably not gonna name the same 5. And frankly, the only one I would hear maybe mentioned more than once might be a firm like Fisher that's been hitting direct mail inboxes for people for 35 years, and it's almost said in an annoying way, not a favorable way, to be honest with you. I don't like to pick fights with anyone. I'm just saying that's the case. But I'm a big believer that within the industry, we do have local industry household names where, frankly, brands like Cerity have started to build that profile of being a well-known entity. And my question for you is it really a worthwhile end game to try to become a household name? Or is it, your mind, is your attitude trying to build up currency with the households that need to know your name? React to that, Rob.
I think the first response is going to be is, what is an RIA? If you ask somebody on the street, and then, you're gonna have to explain that to them and be like, oh, okay. I'd say, I think we have a lofty goal. Like that's essentially where we want to go. If you stop someone on the street and you ask them, who is your wealth manager and who delivers that best experience, we want them to say that, compound planning obviously delivers that obviously better planning experience that you're going to get everywhere. Now, we don't know how long that's going to take. We are, far behind where Cerity Partners is in terms of assets under management, but we're growing fast. And ultimately, you need a vision to get there. But ultimately, I think the more important thing is, to answer your question, is being in the short term, being that firm for the ideal client that you're trying to target, and we're having success there. So it's still a long way to go, but I think it is a worthwhile exercise. It's something for you to look forward to over the next 1, 3, 5, 10 years, and that's kind of the way that we're approaching it.
Great. And Tara, what's your take on that?
Yeah, slightly different take than Rob. I would say our goal is not necessarily to be a household name in that we, and in terms of not trying to be all things to all people, our specialty is managing those with wealth and a decent amount of wealth. And so you will not see us, with our name on a sports stadium. Like it would be casting too wide of a net for us. And in the spirit of not being all things to all people, and the conversation we were having earlier around sharpening the pencil on our key demographics. No, I don't think that that's what we aspire to be, but I do think we aspire to be, a brand that has an incredible amount of quality and excellence tied to its name within the right circles, and those tend to be individuals with wealth or high levels of wealth because our advisors specialize in high degrees of complexity. It's just where they live. And so I think we have to be really judicious about where we spend our dollars and how we think about our targeting mechanisms so that we are getting the most ROI for those efforts. And those really should be, for us at least, pretty targeted.
So if you're going to work towards your game plans, both of you are already installed in this role. But I think anyone who's aspiring to be a household name, or frankly just having sustainable organic growth, needs to have a CMO or head of marketing, someone who's empowered in the leadership group to run marketing. So there's a stat that I heard early this year, and frankly, I've used it a couple times on stage, but because it blows me away, is that fewer than 1 in 11 RIA firms with $5 billion or more under management have someone who's a director or EVP, director, or CMO in marketing, right? To me, that is stunning. Where if 5 years ago wouldn't have blown me away, but seeing that stat persist today, so it's basically called 9% of the firms that are 5 billion and more. What do you think is making the industry lag in terms of putting their money where their mouth is, or finding the person to lead the charge? What do you see operationally? Maybe Tara, maybe your vantage point, because there's a lot of acquisitions going on, you see it differently. I love to hear what you think is holding that back, where we need to go, is what we can do together to cultivate more leaders, whatever it is. Tara, what's your thoughts?
I mean, look, I think if you ask 10 different marketers this question, you'll probably get 10 different answers. My bias in the 2+ years I've been surrounded by incredible advisors is that a lot of them have been incredibly successful through referrals. And so I think it's a classic case of what got you here isn't going to get you there, in the sense that there are smaller RIAs that, and even not so small, that just have really great talent and a really great referral business. And so you can get to a certain place if you have advisors that are really comfortable making those asks and really growing by referral. I think that for those businesses that want to take it to the next level, there's a tipping point, right? Where you do need to start to deploy more sophisticated, purposeful marketing. And that's really where you need to bring someone in, not just to deploy the marketing. And I'm sure, Rob, right, you're singing this song all the time, but educating the organization on the value of marketing, how it works. And so I probably spend 50% of my time, we affectionately call it on our team, marketing our marketing. You need someone to do that too, because until you have someone vouching for the need for it, it's just not apparent to people. So, but you do have to hit that tipping point where I think people start to see things plateau just from the referral business. And then, right, then taking that leap to the next level is where you need to have someone in place.
So Tara, I'm going to react to your answer, but I want to hear Rob's take on this first.
Yeah, well, I agree with a lot of what Tara just said there. I think especially the smaller firms that have great referral networks, either through COIs or just through their clients, and they're knowing how to grow that. They don't need the marketing. Firms that are trying to grow at the pace that we're trying to grow, it's really hard to grow that fast just through your client referrals, because kind of like SEO and a bunch of these other things, it takes time to build up that trust with your clients and those partners to be able to drive those things forward. And then the other side of it is I think the concerns around compliance and knowing what you can do or can't do, what you can say, what you can't say, is another thing that holds people back, and feel like it's going to be a drag on the other parts of their business that might be working. So there's a number of different reasons. I'm probably missing a few out, or leaving a few out, but that's kind of like why I think there aren't as many marketers in at the leadership level across those companies.
Well, your comments are both well taken. And so the thing that triggered my mind when Tara was talking was this. I've seen dozens, if not thousands, of RIA firms in my career in terms of talk. Sometimes they hire us, sometimes we don't, but we still talk to them about what they're doing in their marketing. And that G1 leadership, they're the rainmakers, the founders, the people, the relationships. And the paradigm of how they built their business very often is that there's 3 or 4 of them that are Mr. or Mrs. Outside, and they're dealing with clients or bringing the business. And they have other advisors, people are licensed, maybe have CFPs, whatever, but they're doing the day-to-day client work, or they're not building that network the same way. And when they graduate to being sort of, okay, we need someone else to be a Mr. or Mrs. Outside, they don't have the chops, the network to be successful. So, well, how do I build my book? And they turn around and they're looking for help there, right? And then that's where, people like us come in and say, all right, well, you need to have something that works for them. The flip side is, I also think, going back to AI discussion, that with AI, and there's going to be people whose jobs might get taken by AI, some of the power planner activities and things like that. Those people that are really interested in know the industry will be able to graduate into more client-facing work because they don't need them to stay in that role of being an admin or a power planner, and they may earlier in their career be able to build relationships and become more successful at the referral piece of it. It doesn't wash away the message of there needs to be another complementary piece for marketing. And frankly, I think the last 5 years taught us everything. A lot of people don't like to go out as much the same way. People work from home. People are happier to, do things differently. And so you have to reach them in those different formats. So I think there's a lot of different layers to that. But still stymies the question, like, how do you develop the talent? How do you develop people who can step up? Like Tara, you used the phrase earlier in this conversation, I was coming back to, that you said you've been building your team. Give us what's a rough head count in terms of people devoting marketing and communications to Cerity today?
14 people.
14, right? Those 14 people, if they stay the course and grow their career, maybe some of them are future CMOs elsewhere or within, or things like that. But Rob, what's your marketing comms team?
So our team is 3 people, and then
Okay.
we work with a bunch of different agencies.
Exactly. So those are the paradigms. You have both what I call a force, and you've got I think borrower rent or approach, and but I think the fact that both of you have multiple marketers, like Rob, your firm has 3 marketers, and 1 in 11 don't have a CM. I mean, sorry, 9 out of what is it? 9% don't even have a CMO. It's like there's so many organizations that haven't committed to one real person. They have, someone in operations or, front office person who happens to dabble in marketing, right? And so that, to me, I think for all of us, for the sustainability of the organic growth, and we need to mint more of these professionals. We need to find all these people and get them empowered to have roles. If you want, especially if Tara, you're looking to hire someone, I'm more willing to bet that you're just as likely to find them outside the financial industry as in the industry in terms of finding people to build with, right?
And open to all industries if it's the right person.
Yeah. And I don't think many of us grow up if we were imagining ourselves as marketers or publicists, we weren't thinking that we want to do it for an insurance company or investment bank or an RIA, or thinking, hey, can I do this for the Yankees or my favorite musician or something like that? So I think there's a long way to go for us. And I think if we could solve the talent development, I think it'd also give more firms a reason to plug in someone at a higher level to run marketing, because there'll be a little trust that they've got somebody who has the right component. So anyway, that's my little soapbox thing when we talk about why firms don't have marketers. One last real question before we get to a couple final fun ones. Everybody asks me, think about, like, if you come off stage at an event, what people really want to ask, but they don't want to ask in front of everybody. And the question usually is like, how much should I be spending on marketing? How do I figure out what my budget is? You don't have to give away your inside secret, what you're doing, but can you give us a sense of how do you frame that? Like, what's reasonable to expect, whether a percentage of revenue? Like, will you have anything to offer our audience in terms of like what's a good starting point, even getting in that conversation on, budget for marketing?
I'll jump in. Look, I think there's a couple different ways to look at it. I think you can think about it as a percentage of revenue, and that can be helpful for some. I also think about the the marketing budget and investments in marketing year over year as a little bit of, right, surge and then maybe plateau. So every year you're not going to be aggressively pushing forward 5 different initiatives. Maybe you are, but your budget may not allow for that. And so I do think, it's helpful to think about your marketing budget in terms of what are those 1 or 2 things that you're going to put your eggs in that basket this year and you're really going to fight for it. And then everything else you're going to keep moving, you're going to keep growing, but you're not going to necessarily try to get like those huge 5 things done all at once. And I've found that the leadership team responds really well to the fact that you're being thoughtful about how many things you can get done in one year with, right? We're all working with the budgets that we're given. Um, so making the case for 1 or 2, I think is really, really helpful. And then you lean into that for a year. And then the next year, maybe it's the same thing, but or maybe you choose a couple different things. So there's a sense of not everything is aggressively moving forward at the same pace every year, but you're picking and choosing your things each year, which I think has served me well in terms of just year over year budget.
Smart. And Rob, how you tackle that question?
Yeah, so for us, it starts with our goals. So, what is our AUM goal or revenue goal that we're trying to reach in the given period, whether that's a year, quarter, or whatever? And then that's where the data becomes really important. It's like, okay, we want to do more revenue next year than we've ever done as a business before. What needs to be true to make that happen? Here are the things that we know have worked. And some of these things you can put more money into, and they continue to scale. Other things that aren't like that, and that's essentially where we start with the process, and then we just try to essentially have different buckets of the different programs that we're working on. Some of the things that we know that are working, call those kind of the scale bucket, and then we kind of go into our experiment or the R&D bucket and be like, hey, this is how much money we're going to break up into these things to eventually reach our goals. But it starts with the goals. Then from there, we know how much pipeline we need to achieve that. And then from there, based off the data and our historical kind of success rates, what the budget associated with that pipeline coverage needs to be.
Yeah, and I think those are both great approaches. And it reminds me of something previous guest said to me, that marketing that works is an investment, marketing that doesn't is an expense. And that's how it'll always be judged by those that aren't in the marketing group. And to come up, so it goes back to what you said earlier, making sure the metrics, the dashboards, what are we actually aiming for, to understand the way we look at it with our clients, and whether it's in wealth management or asset management or other areas of industry, is they identify what those short-term goals are. What are the benchmarks you want to see in Q1, the first couple half of the year, first year, and so forth, that'll show that you're on the right track in developing progress towards those goals. In the world of wealth management, it's usually client acquisition, advisor recruitment, AUM growth, and revenue growth, right? And those are always your North Star, but how do you get there? And some of it might be, hey, we never have a lot of web traffic. Now we went from having 50 people a week to 500 a week, or whatever that metric is, right? And then even though that you're not building a business on web traffic, law of numbers, that's going to lead to something. And so we always found when we're trying to help our clients figure out, okay, how to grow and build that, and frankly, empower the CMOs or the aspiring CMOs, is to be able to think about how do you create that pathway where you can measure progress, where you're responding to the internal imperative of growing, right? And so it's a challenge for us all, but I appreciate your answer on that. So this will be our last published episode before Christmas and New Year, so we'll have a fun question. Over the summer, we did Songs of the Summer playlist with some of our guests. What is your go-to holiday song or tune, or 1 or 2 things are most likely to be on your Spotify mix, or you play in the car either alone or with your spouse or your kids, or have a little fun with that one. How about this? While you're thinking, I'll give you mine too. This way you can react. I'm more inclined. I like some of the classic songs, but I really have appreciated, not when I say classic, like Bing Crosby. I like some of the way he sings, but For me, people always, most likely hear me play Bruce Springsteen's Santa Claus is Coming to Town.
He stole mine. Oh, there it is.
Well, that's good. And then, and if you don't like that, I think Tracy Chapman does an awesome rendition of Oh Holy Night if you're looking for more of like a traditional Christmas song. So those are my two. So play along. Tara, does that ring any bells for you?
I'm a big fan of just like the holiday stations on Sirius, just on loop, but I do enjoy like a good Karen Carpenter, it's so sad you're like making cookies and crying at the same time, style. But I do like just the rotating mix. It is on starting like November 30 all the way through New Year's in our house.
That's fun. So Rob, you have little kids. Do they have a favorite? Do you have a favorite?
Well, right now we're fighting with them to get them to listen to the Christmas songs. We got K-pop Demon Hunters on repeat in our household. So we try to get in those, different Spotify or Apple Music playlists. But yeah, I could probably listen to Bruce Springsteen, Santa Claus Coming to Town on repeat and be very happy. So that's my top song.
Well, you know what we've done with have you ever used the Suno app on AI? You basically can feed in lyrics to your favorite Christmas song and ask them to spit it out in K-pop style.
All right.
So it's kind of like Kids Bop. It's like Kids Bop on Sirius XM, so just if you're more playful use of, and you also write your own songs too on that and have it adapted to a style. So ones that tell your kids to do their homework, to make their bed, But anyway, that's fun. Thanks for playing along there. So the last installment of our podcast is always asking our clients for their parting shot, or our guests for their parting shot. And so I want to frame the parting shot from you all. It's like, what's one New Year's resolution you have for yourself or you would challenge other marketers for next year? Like, what's one thing that you want to get done or you think should be like a guiding light for marketers that are trying to grow businesses in the wealth space? It could be specifically to RIAs, it could be more broadly, but what's something that you would put on the radar for yourself or for people in general?
I'll jump in, Rob. I think the New Year's resolution and something that we talk about on our team all the time is, I think as marketers, we tend to get pulled into a lot and it's sort of the next shiny thing all the time. I think a much better approach is after any big campaign or initiative, taking that time to assess and also wrap a bow around it and share it with the organization to make sure people really understand what went into something, what you got out of it, what went wrong, what we learned, and doing that every single time with rigor, because I think we're all doing so much in this space, but taking that time to wrap a bow around it, literally, like no pun intended for Christmas, helps you learn, but it helps you market your marketing.
That's good advice. Rob?
Yeah, well, I just really agree with that. Like having that retrospective, just for the good and the bad. I think something I don't do enough of is celebrate our wins, and or look at like why these things didn't work. But I think celebrating the wins is really important for an organization, and it's really important to learn from your mistakes or things that didn't work. I'd say one thing that I'm really thinking about, mainly being like a small but mighty team for next year, is focusing even more on some of the manual tasks that we're doing on repeat, and trying to find ways to help or find AI and different agent tools to kind of do those things for us. There's some kind of maybe higher risk things that you don't want it to do, but there's plenty of stuff that we're doing that we don't necessarily need to continue to add headcount for. And we can find ways to kind of get AI and different agents to do those things for us. So that's going to be a big theme for us next year.
Oh, terrific. Well, Rob and Tara, two of you are walking endorsements why firms trying to go in the RIA space should have marketing leaders. Really insightful stuff. I appreciate you being so willing to share your points of view with each other, even though you didn't even know each other before we started recording this. So it's always fantastic. I think you do have a lot in common despite the different challenges and size of the firms you're working with right now. So really fantastic. Thank you for taking the time out. And again, for the audience, we have Rob Stella, who leads up marketing for Compound Planning, and Tara Ryan, the Chief Marketing Officer at Cerity Partners. Both of you, thank you so much. Enjoy the holiday season, and we look forward to seeing you out in the wild.
Thanks,
Thank you, Joe. Great to meet you, Tara.
You too, Rob.
Thanks for listening to Marketing Matchup, a production of Gregory. If you like what you heard, please listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.